The days blurred into nights, and the nights into days. He lost track of time, the 40 nights becoming an endless cycle of introspection and struggle. There were moments of terror, of darkness so deep he thought he would be lost forever. He saw visions of the child abandoned by the gods, the face of the boy twisted in anger and pain, his eyes filled with a hatred that seemed to pierce through Amadioha's very being. But then there were moments of light, brief flashes of clarity, where he felt the presence of the creative force within him, a power so vast, so limitless, that it took his breath away. He understood then what Orunmila had meant. The source was not something external, something to be found. It was within him, a part of his very essence. By the 40th night, something had changed. The chaos within him had given way to a deep, unshakable calm. He felt as though he had touched something beyond himself, something that connected him to everything, the gods, the humans, the world itself. He could feel the raw god force within him, a power that was both terrifying and beautiful, a power that could shape reality if wielded with wisdom. Slowly, Amadioha rose from the water, his body glowing faintly with the energy of the raw water. Orunmila stood waiting for him on the shore, his expression filled with pride and relief. "You did well, Amadioha," Orunmila said, his voice carrying a warmth that Amadioha had not heard before. "You have found the stillness within you, the key to unlocking the divine." Amadioha nodded, his gaze steady. "I understand now. The power was never something to be sought. It was always there, waiting for me to be ready." Orunmila smiled, placing a hand on Amadioha's shoulder. "Exactly. And now, with this foundation, we will move on to the next phase of your training. You have learned to connect with the divine force. Now you must learn to manifest it." Amadioha's eyes blazed with determination. "I am ready." Orunmila nodded, his gaze filled with both hope and caution. "Let us begin." The sun hung low on the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow over the temple grounds as Orunmila and Amadioha stood facing each other. There was a new aura about Amadioha, one that spoke of the trials he had endured and the power he had touched. His gaze was calm, focused, as he waited for Orunmila's next instructions. Orunmila smiled faintly, his eyes reflecting both pride and anticipation. "You have taken an important step, Amadioha. You have found the stillness within you, the foundation that will allow you to access the creative force. But there is more to learn, more that you must understand if you are to truly manifest the divine power within you." Amadioha nodded, his expression serious. "Tell me, Orunmila." Orunmila gestured for him to sit, and both gods lowered themselves to the ground, sitting cross-legged opposite each other. Orunmila studied Amadioha for a moment before speaking. "Do you remember the time with Anansi?" Orunmila began, his voice calm. "Do you remember when you almost spoke the truth, the answer that would have shattered the fabric of reality?" Amadioha nodded, his eyes narrowing in thought. "Yes, my mouth was sealed, as if some force had prevented me from speaking." Orunmila nodded in agreement. "And do you know why that happened?" Amadioha shook his head. "No, I do not understand why my voice was taken." Orunmila smiled, leaning forward slightly. "The mouth is the gateway of creation, Amadioha. It is said that the creator gods spoke the world into existence, that their words shaped reality. This is not a myth, it is truth. Every being, whether human or god, possesses this power, but few understand how to use it." He paused, his gaze intense. "The power of manifestation lies not just in the strength of your body or the force of your will. It lies in the ability to believe with such conviction that the universe itself bends to your will. The reason your mouth was sealed is because the words you were about to speak held the power to reshape reality. The universe was not ready for such a truth." Amadioha's eyes widened slightly, realization dawning on him. "So, to manifest, one must believe without doubt." "Exactly," Orunmila said, nodding. To manifest and bend reality, you must first believe it with every part of your being, without the slightest doubt. Humans often struggle with this. They do not believe they can command a mountain to move, and so they cannot. They are bound by their limitations, their doubts. But you, Amadioha, you are a god. You command lightning and thunder because upon your creation you were the god of thunder. There was no doubt within you, and so you summoned the greatest storm. Amadioha looked thoughtful, his gaze shifting to the horizon. But it's different for humans. They don't believe they can do such things, so they don't even try. And even when they do try, there is always doubt, isn't there? Orunmila nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. Yes. Doubt is the greatest barrier to manifestation. It is the reason why most beings, even gods, cannot fully access their potential. You too are not immune to this, Amadioha. Though you are strong and powerful, there are things you believe you cannot do. Amadioha raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. What do you mean? Orunmila smiled, a knowing glint in his eyes. For example, you rely on your thunder and lightning as your power. But have you ever considered other abilities? Have you ever tried to move an object with your mind, to use telekinesis? Amadioha looked surprised, shaking his head. Telekinesis is not my power. I have never thought of it. That, Orunmila said, his voice gentle but firm, is the limitation you have placed on yourself. You believe that because you are the god of thunder, your powers are confined to lightning alone. But the truth is, your potential is limitless. The power of the source is within you, and that means you can manifest anything, if you believe it. Amadioha looked at Orunmila, the weight of his words sinking in. So what must I do? Orunmila smiled. You must train your mind to believe without limits, without doubts. That is the purpose of your training here. The meditation in the raw water was to open your mind, to help you connect with the divine. Now you must learn to manifest. He stood, motioning for Amadioha to rise as well. We will train for what will feel like a year in the mortal world. You will learn to focus your mind, to remove all doubt and to command reality itself. You will learn to manifest power beyond what you believed possible. Amadioha nodded, determination blazing in his eyes. I am ready. And so began Amadioha's next phase of training, learning to manifest the power of the creative force. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Orunmila guided Amadioha through exercises that pushed his mind to the limits, challenging him to move objects with his thoughts, to reshape elements, to bend reality itself. At first, there were failures, many of them. Objects would budge slightly, only to fall still. Flames would flicker, but not ignite. Doubts lingered in Amadioha's mind, the voice of disbelief whispering that these were not his powers. But Orunmila was patient, guiding him through each failure, each doubt. The power is within you, he would say. You must believe, Amadioha, without hesitation, without fear. Only then can you manifest. Slowly things began to change. One day Amadioha raised his hand and a stone floated into the air, defying gravity. Another day he summoned a flame with nothing but his thoughts, watching as it danced across his palm. And as his training continued, Amadioha began to feel a shift within him, a deep, unshakable connection to the source. Then came the day when Orunmila decided it was time to access a fraction of the creative power. It was a power so vast, so raw, that even a tiny fragment could change the course of existence. You have learned well, Amadioha, Orunmila said, his eyes filled with both pride and caution. Now you will borrow a fraction of the creative power. It is enough to alter the balance of worlds. But you must control it, mask it, for its presence can erase gods from existence. Amadioha took a deep breath, closing his eyes as he focused inward. He could feel the power deep within him, like a blazing sun waiting to be tapped. Slowly, he allowed himself to access it, a tiny, almost insignificant fraction. The world around him seemed to shift, the air vibrating with an intensity that made the ground tremble. The heavens shook and the earth trembled, a deep rumble echoing through the underworld itself. Amadioha felt the power surging through him, the sheer force of it almost overwhelming. But he held on, his mind focused, his will unbreakable. He could feel the weight of the power, the danger of it, and he understood why Orunmila had warned him to be careful. The pressure was immense, so much that it could erase gods from existence. Slowly, Amadioha began to tone it down, to pull the power back within himself, masking it until he felt like nothing more than an ordinary mortal. The trembling stopped, the world returning to its normal state. Orunmila nodded, his eyes filled with approval. "Well done, Amadioha. You have learned to access and control the power within you, and more importantly, you have learned to mask it. The power you possess is immense, but it must be wielded with wisdom and restraint." Amadioha nodded, a sense of accomplishment washing over him. He had felt the power, touched it, and understood both its potential and its danger. Orunmila smiled, placing a hand on Amadioha's shoulder. "But this is only the beginning. There is much to come, and you will not face it alone. You will need allies, Amadioha. You must gather those who will stand with you when the time comes, for the balance of everything we know is at stake." Amadioha looked at Orunmila, determination blazing in his eyes. "I will gather them. I will be ready." Orunmila nodded, his gaze filled with hope. "Good. Because when the time comes, the fate of gods, humans, and all of existence will depend on what you do next."